In 2009, during her run for county court judge in Hillsborough County, Florida, Lana Williams Yulee sent a fundraising letter to potential supporters and posted it on her campaign website. After Yulee lost the election, the Florida bar took steps to discipline her for violating Canon 7C1, which prohibits judicial candidates from personally soliciting campaign funds. The Florida Supreme Court appointed a referee who was recommended that Yulee pay the bar $1,860.30 plus be publicly reprimanded. On appeal to the court, Yulee argued that Canon 7C1 was an unconstitutional infringement of her right of free speech, Acknowledging that the canon restricted speech, the court analyzed it under the First Amendment using strict scrutiny, which requires speech restrictions to be narrowly tailored to serve a compelling government interest. The U.S. Supreme Court affirmed the lower court's ruling by a 5-4 decision for the Florida bar. In the ruling, the court held that the restriction in this case serves the compelling state interest of preserving public confidence in the integrity of the judiciary and is sufficiently narrowly tailored to that interest. Well, Justice Anton Scalia wrote a dissenting opinion in which he argued that the First Amendment protects all speech, unless widespread and long-standing traditions permits its regulation, which is not the case here. Because the rule in question presumably violates the First Amendment, the court can only uphold if it is narrowly tailored to serve a compelling state interest. In this case, there is no evidence that banning personal requests for contributions in a judicial election increases public faith in judicial integrity, and the rule bans much more speech than would be narrowly tailored to serve an interest. And that is the case of the Florida bar.
The ethical issue in question is quite simple. The First Amendment does not apply in this case, as William Yulee tried to argue, due to the fact that she tried to personally direct her fundraising at specific people instead of reaching out to the general public. Judicial candidates cannot make personal appeals for money, and this is what she did. Drawing upon judgments in states with similar ruling, the court found a compelling interest in the goal of protecting the integrity of the judiciary and maintaining the public's confidence in an impartial judiciary. If she wanted to win this case, she would have had to prove that she fundraised to the general public and that her thank you cards were very general and not specific as she had done.
Further expanding on the ethical issues outlined by Stephanie, Williams Yulee brought issue to the people of Florida because the public should be absolutely confident that all juries they may face are completely unbiased. Having personally solicited funds, one can see a potential ethical dilemma arising in the future. If someone that had donated to Williams Yulee in the past and then was on trial for a case she was hearing, Williams Yulee may be biased towards that person because they had helped fund her campaign. This is where the biggest ethical issue lies. This could also jeopardize the future credibility of not only the Florida court that she was running for, but the credibility of the Florida bar in general, because if they allowed the personal solicitation of funds in this case, other candidates would follow suit, and bias could potentially be present in any Florida courtroom.
So as you guys can see, this isn't necessarily the most interesting or the most exciting case example that we have gone over so far this year, but is still relatable to the material that we have touched on in class. So first of all, this case is mainly focused on the First Amendment. Williams Yulee argued that her not being able to solicit her own funds was against her right of free speech, but the judges disagreed and they said that the First Amendment was not violated. The court analyzed this case under the First Amendment using strict scrutiny, which, as you may recall, occurs when laws that inhibit people from fundamental rights are viewed under the strict scrutiny. According to the court, rules that limit speech in the case of charitable solicitation context are typically subjected to strict First Amendment scrutiny because this often deals with the issues of public concern, which is what the First Amendment is designed to protect. This case also touches on the concept of due process and how it is necessary for there to be fair treatment in court. The judges couldn't make a decision based off of the First Amendment alone, so due process came into play in this case. So thanks everybody for listening, and we look forward to hearing your comments and questions about Williams Yulee versus the Florida bar.